Hello and welcome to 2025 Winter Session with Harvard. My name is Ty. I'm with the Harvard Federal Credit Union. We are the ones that are running these presentations today. Thank you so much for joining us here today. We have an awesome presentation with one of our partners over at GreenPath. It's going to be really great. But I want to get into a couple just bookkeeping things before we really dive into the content of today's presentation. Today we are in webinar mode. I'm sure you are all very used to Zoom stuff at this point, but webinar mode basically means that you're all automatically muted and your cameras are off, so you don't have to worry about coming on or whatever. You can eat your lunch, you can take a break and just enjoy the webinar without needing to worry about mute or anything like that. As an extension of that, we are asking everybody to use the Q&A feature today rather than the Zoom chat. The Zoom chat will be disabled for today's presentation, but we do heavily encourage questions. So please use the Q&A feature. We'll try to answer questions throughout, as well as have time to answer any outstanding questions at the end as well. Today's presentation is being recorded. We record all of our webinars, and we have them actually available for free on our YouTube channel after today's presentation. So you can always go back and review it or share it if you want to, whatever it is. And then we're going to have a post-workshop survey today, just because we are always trying to find ways to improve and to find ways that we can work with our members and members of the community, whether or not you're a member of the credit union, to just make sure that we're improving the quality and making sure we're answering and addressing things that are actually things that people want to know. So we read all of the feedback, so please take a second, if you will, at the end. You're going to get it in an email, the survey link. So without further ado, though, we're going to introduce the team. So I am Ty Robinson. This is my team. We're the community engagement team here at the credit union. Our roles are really to get in touch with the community and find ways to give back. And we handle a lot of the volunteer events that we do, as well as all of these financial education workshops and webinars that we do with the college and beyond. So that's us. We have Jen Fries in the background today. She's going to be helping putting links in the chat, as well as answering some questions and stuff as we go. And I'm kind of going to be the little intro host before we get Amber on here. So just a little bit about the credit union before we get started, because this is something we're always getting questions about, is what is the difference between a credit union and a bank specifically? There are a number of differences. The number one is that credit unions are not-for-profit organizations. So basically we do everything that a bank does. You can open accounts, loans, credit cards, all that stuff with us. But because we are not for profit, we are not looking to make a profit off of our members. In fact, every member is a partial owner of the credit union. They can vote on decisions and things like that. And we are very much member focused and community focused, always trying to find ways that we can give back the profit that would have been made as in the banking world back to our members and to our community. We do that in a lot of different ways. We have really good products and services. For example, we waive all ATM fees for our members. If you have an account with us, you take cash out of an ATM and that ATM charges you a fee, no matter which ATM it is. We automatically refund those, which is really cool. And then we do have a lot of, better rates, fewer fees for our products and that sort of thing. So definitely worth taking a look at, but we've got a lot of great things today. But that's enough about me. I really want to make sure we're getting into today's presentation. So I want to do a little intro for our super amazing presenter we have today. Amber Miller is a partner experience manager with GreenPath Financial Wellness, a nationwide nonprofit organization. Prior to her current role, working with GreenPath's partner credit unions to expand the reach of GreenPath's financial wellness, support, and resources, she provided financial and housing counseling for over 2 years, counseling both in person in Philadelphia and New Jersey, and over the phone nationwide, while holding National Foundation for Credit Counseling and HUD Housing Counseling certifications. Amber lives in Philadelphia with her husband and 3 cats, and when it's not winter, you can find her spending most of her time outside of work in her garden. So, Amber, I'm going to hand it over to you. Thank you so much for joining us today and running today's presentation.
Hey, thanks, Ty, and thank you all for joining us. Happy to be here this afternoon. Like Ty said, I am from an organization called GreenPath Financial Wellness. We are here and on a mission to empower people to lead financially healthy lives. I know that sounds a little broad, maybe even a little bit vague, but that's intentional. At GreenPath, we recognize that a financially healthy life means something different to each of us. And it should, right? We all are in different financial situations. We all have different goals that we would like to reach financially. So our definitions of what a financially healthy life means are going to vary from each of us as well. So we are here to help people figure out what financial wellness means to them and then educate, equip, empower them, come alongside of them to get where they want to be financially. So we do this in a variety of ways. Presentations like this through partnerships with credit unions like Harvard are one of the main ways that we do this. And I'm glad to be here with you all today to talk about options for dealing with debt. So let's take just a couple minutes to kind of quickly go through what we're going to talk about here this afternoon. First of all, we're going to talk about a few initial steps to take to prepare to get your debt paid off. Then we will talk about 5 different options people use to tackle their debt, cover some pros and cons of each. And finally, we'll wrap up with tips to stay on track towards your own goals around dealing with debt. So let's start out by taking a quick look at how to get prepared to pay debt off. So first up, getting a clear understanding of your current financial situation can feel intimidating or can perhaps feel even a little bit scary, but it is imperative to your debt-free success. Knowing where you currently stand will help you set clear, realistic goals and evaluate your options that you have and what's going to make the most sense to you a little bit more confidently. So start out by making a list of all your income. This includes anything you can count on to come in consistently. Your paycheck, child support, social security, however you receive money, you need to know how much you have to work with each month. Make sure you're not including things that maybe vary a little bit, like overtime, unless it's guaranteed to be consistent, or other, income that may vary significantly or be unreliable as well. Inconsistent income like overtime, side hustles, bonuses, these could be considered extra funds to help you reach your goals quicker, but it's best to not be considered as part of your budget unless you know it's pretty guaranteed to come in regularly. Review your checking and savings account balances so you know overall across the board where you currently stand. Next, it's important to understand where your money is currently going. Take a look through your statements and make a detailed list of all monthly bills and payment obligations, as well as anything else your money is consistently going to right now. Food, gas, childcare, entertainment, subscriptions, all of those miscellaneous other expenses. Take a look back over a few months to get an accurate representation of the average amount you spend in each area over time. We just came through December. December looks quite a bit different for a lot of us with our spending than maybe June does. So try and get an idea over a period of time to get a rough average representation of the amount that you spend over time. Some online banking options will provide you with a breakdown by category for you to make this even easier, but really spend some time digging in here to figure out how much you're spending. Don't guess. Sometimes we can be surprised by what we overestimate, what we underestimate. So spending the time to really dig in deep here and get these actual numbers is going to be really, really key to your success here with getting this debt tackled. It's also important to make a list of all the debt that you owe. So know who you owe, know exactly how much you currently owe them, your current interest rates, current monthly minimum payments, and if anything is currently past due or if everything's up to date, you'll want to know your due dates, all of those details here for these accounts that you owe. I also encourage you to pull a copy of your credit report from all 3 credit bureaus at this point. That would be TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax. Those are the 3 credit bureaus. Reviewing your credit reports can help you ensure you have not forgotten anything, or maybe there's something floating around out there that you didn't even realize existed or potentially forgot about. It's recommended to get in the habit of reviewing your credit reports at least once a year. You can do this more regularly, but it's a good habit to do at least once a year. And we recommend going to annualcreditreport.com to review your reports for free from all 3 credit bureaus in one trusted place. All right. Every financial situation is unique, and taking these steps to get prepared are all important as they will be able to help you determine what options to pay off debt may or may not work well for you. So there is no cut and dry solution that is guaranteed to work best for everybody, and there are pros and cons to every option that must be weighed individually. So there are several people on this call today. There is not going to be any one of these options that we're going to talk about that's going to make the most sense for everybody who's logged in today. One option may make most sense for me, a different option may make more sense for Ty, other options may make sense for you. So there's no right or wrong answer here. Again, we all have different situations, we all have different things to weigh, and we're all going to come out in a spot where we're finding what's working best for us. I know that getting rid of debt can feel really daunting and perhaps even impossible if you've been trying to work towards this for a while, or if it just feels like you're in over your head and you're not sure how you'll ever be able to get past this. And it can be hard to know what options are even available to you, not to mention the added pressure of trying to determine what is legitimate versus what is a scam or what is maybe not in your best interest. So let's move into taking a look at some different options that may help becoming debt-free feel realistic for you. Today, we're going to touch on 5 main options to get rid of debt, doing it on your own, debt consolidation loans, debt settlement, which is also known as debt relief, bankruptcy, and debt management plans. This is by all means not an all-inclusive list. This is, a few key options that people tend to be familiar with or have heard of or turn to. So these are the ones that I want to talk through, but please do know there are some other options out there if none of these feel like a good fit for you. So chances are you may have already been trying to pay debt off on your own, but without a plan, your success may have been limited. If you have money left over in your budget, a strategy to pay the debt down may be as simple as increasing the monthly payments. If this is you, consider using the debt snowball method, which is a strategy where you pay off debt in order of smallest to largest balances, gaining momentum as you go. It's extremely important to make sure you always make the minimum payment for all accounts and then put any extra funds towards the smallest account balance. Once that account is paid off, success with this method relies on you consistently redirecting all the money you were paying towards that account to the next debt until all of the balances are paid back in full. The idea here is as an account pays off and that money goes to the next, it's getting larger and larger, like a snowball grows as it's rolling down a hill. The debt snowball method can be really inspiring as you start making progress and see that snowball growing as those debts get paid off over time. You could also consider what's called the debt avalanche method, which is the strategy of allocating enough money to, again, make the minimum payment on all of the debts and then pay extra to the debt with the highest interest rate. So similar to the snowball, which pays off balances from smallest to largest, the debt avalanche focuses on paying balances off from highest interest rate to lowest interest rate. Finally, you could approach each creditor to ask if they can offer any internal hardship programs or promotional rates to help you lower your interest rates, maybe stop late fees, to allow you to get the debt paid off faster. Make sure you're keeping track of the conversations with the creditors, when you speak with them, name of the person, what was agreed to. Review your budget to ensure you are not agreeing to something that is not realistic for you to follow through on. As I mentioned earlier, every option that we're going to talk about has unique pros and considerations, which we'll look at with each option we discuss today. So pros of all 3 of these kind of do it on your own options, the snowball, the avalanche, or working with creditors directly to try and get a promotional rate or a hardship program, is that first of all, there's really no financial cost to you to implement them. You're already doing these things, really just focusing on getting that budget in place to make extra payments to get these paid off sooner. You also wouldn't have to apply or be subject to any underwriting or approval requirements. Some creditors may need some information from you to determine if they can offer a hardship program, but it's not as in-depth as like applying for a loan or anything like that would be. In general, if done as intended, these options will typically have little or no negative impact on your credit and may allow you to keep the accounts open if that's your goal. Be sure to talk about this if pursuing a hardship option with the creditor. In some cases, they may close that account, so if your goal is to keep it open, that's something you'll want to understand if you're exploring this with a creditor directly. However, there are some considerations to keep in mind. There are challenges to tackling debt on your own, including the need for strict self-accountability to follow through with the constant pulls all around us to spend our money in other ways or to get off track. Something to consider if choosing to reach out for credit or hardship plans may also be the time commitment to make those calls, as well as your comfort level reaching out to have these conversations with creditors. If you've got 6 or 7 different accounts, that's quite a bit of time to make those phone calls, wait on hold, get to the right department, explain your situation. You're also at the mercy of the willingness of each creditor to offer an option, and if it's an option that will last long term. Sometimes creditors are maybe willing to offer you an internal option, but it may only be for 6 months, and then things are going to go right back to where they are currently. Creditors may also freeze or completely close out an account as part of a hardship program as well. So these are things that you'll definitely want to understand if you're looking into this, if you're going that route. For many of us, though, there is not money left over each month. So increasing payments isn't in the cards for people who are barely breaking even or perhaps even running short each month, meaning that a snowball or an avalanche method is going to be tricky. So the good news is there are other options. So starting with the next option I want to talk about, debt consolidation loans. So debt consolidation can come in many different forms, but the basic idea, the basic intent is to borrow money, use that money to pay off all your other debts, and then have one monthly payment back to the lender instead of sending money to those multiple different creditors. A consolidation loan could be an unsecured loan, which requires no collateral, or it could be a secured loan, which means that something of value, like maybe your home, is put up as collateral in case you were to default on that. This could take the form of a home equity loan or a line of credit or a title loan using the vehicle as collateral. It is imperative you understand all the terms and what is at risk if something happens and you were to fall behind on payments before you sign the dotted line for any secured loan. Pros of debt consolidation include knowing what your monthly payment will be and for how long. And the goal of getting a consolidation loan is typically to lock in a lower interest rate and therefore ideally a lower monthly payment than the previous payments combined. Ty mentioned earlier that the credit union offers better rates, fewer fees. This is a phenomenal thing to look into with the credit union to see if this could be a good fit for you if you're working on getting some debt paid off. Your accounts may also not be closed with a consolidation loan when you pay balances off through this. There is a chance that they may. Be sure to ask this question of the lender if exploring this option. Sometimes those loans do need to be, or I'm sorry, those other accounts do need to be closed out. This may be a con, however, if you do not stop using the credit cards or the accounts and you acquire more debt, and suddenly you find yourself with this new debt consolidation loan payment, and you still have credit card payments because you kept using those, and now you're in a spot where your budget is even more stretched. So this is something that you definitely want to weigh and make sure that you have a plan for if those accounts are going to remain open. On the flip side, a few things to keep in mind here. Since this is a loan, you do typically need to apply, go through an underwriting and approval process. Things like income, assets, employment history, credit, amount of debt compared to your income. These are factors that may be taken into strong consideration to determine if a consolidation loan is something that you're eligible to receive. A debt consolidation loan may have a negative impact on credit due to a new inquiry and new account. These are some of the smaller factors involved in your credit score, so it's typically not like a huge significant impact like falling behind on payments or maxing out your card would be. But if that's something that you're sensitive to, it's good to know that this is something that may be coming in the mix. And perhaps most importantly, to weigh heavily, if you take a secured loan, you are risking the collateral, such as your home or vehicle, if you can't afford the payments and fall behind. So exercise caution before using a secured loan to consolidate and pay off unsecured debt, especially if there is a hint of financial uncertainty that could lead to making payments consistently a concern. The interest rates are typically better on secured loans because there's less risk to the lender, but it's really, really important that you weigh the risk to yourself simultaneously. So for example, if you use a home equity loan or a home equity line of credit to consolidate maybe some credit card debt, if something happens and you can't keep up with that payment, your house could now be at risk of foreclosure because the home was used as collateral to secure that loan. There is absolutely a time and a place to do this. There are times where this makes a lot of sense and can be a win. So please do not hear me say that this is never a good idea. Just make sure that you're weighing that risk. Make sure you've got a plan if you're looking into a secured loan specifically to consolidate debt. Great. Next option, debt settlement, which can sometimes also be known as debt relief. If you have ever looked on the internet for debt help, you most likely have seen a settlement company's ad, or you may have seen their ads on TV late at night or on billboards or sponsored posts on your social media feed. In general, this is a solution that is typically best used to help someone who is maybe working on cleaning up debt after it's already in collections, although it is sometimes used by people for open accounts as well. Debt settlement is a negotiation between a creditor and a borrower to pay back a portion of an outstanding debt, while the remainder of the debt is essentially forgiven. So for example, you might owe $5,000 to a creditor, and the creditor could maybe agree to a settlement where you would pay $3,500 and that $1,500 difference would be forgiven through a settlement. I mentioned debt settlement or debt relief companies, but you can also choose to attempt to negotiate a settlement on your own. It is up to your creditor's discretion if they are willing to negotiate and what a settlement offer would look like if they are. It will typically be easier if you have already have the funds to negotiate and pay immediately, and if the account is already past due. People are often most successful negotiating settlements on collection accounts. Make sure you obtain any settlement offers your creditor agrees to in writing, and make sure you know how they will report this to the credit bureaus. Settlement may save you money if you are able to successfully negotiate a lower balance. If you enter into a payment plan or work with a debt settlement company to pay off accounts you are currently paying on, your monthly payment may be potentially a little bit lower than those current payments. Again, settlement can be an option to resolve outstanding collection balances quicker, and it can be an option to avoid more drastic or last resort options like non-payment or bankruptcy. But it is also important to keep several things in mind if considering settlement. First of all, not all creditors are willing to participate in a debt settlement program or negotiate a settlement with you or with a debt settlement company working on your behalf. So please know upfront that it is up to their discretion. So especially if you're working with a debt settlement company, talk to the creditor direct and ask if this is something that they are ever going to be willing to negotiate, because if that answer is no, best case scenario is going to be to come up with another option versus going through this and then ending up getting a no at the end. If you are including accounts that are still open and active in a debt settlement program, which is typically through a for-profit company, those accounts typically fall past due if you work with a debt settlement or debt relief company. The debt settlement program typically hangs on to your payments until a certain balance is reached in your account with them, at which point they reach out to a creditor and attempt to negotiate a settlement. Again, remember, it's up to the creditor's discretion if they will agree to negotiate at this time or not. In the meantime, those accounts have been falling past due as no payments will typically be made to the creditor until enough money has accumulated to offer a settlement. As this happens, the accounts will typically close out, additional late fees and interest will accumulate, and you will likely be receiving collection calls because your creditors are typically left in the dark in this process. They stop getting payments from you, they don't know what's going on, and they're reaching out trying to figure that out and trying to collect on those funds. As those payments start falling past due and balances increase with interest and fees, this can lead to a negative impact on your credit score, as those are the two largest factors impacting it. So if the accounts fall far enough past due, the creditor may send it to collections and or pursue legal action to attempt to collect those balances owed. So if you are pursuing debt settlement, if you are working with a debt settlement or a debt relief company, please pay close attention to any mail that you receive and take immediate action if you get any legal notices or court summons from any of your creditors. While upfront, negotiating a settled balance sounds like a good way to save money, working with a settlement company will lead to them charging you fees. These are typically for-profit companies, so those fees are something that you want to make sure that you understand and calculate to see if it is as much of a savings as it feels like it is. Plus, as we have discussed, you will have additional fees and interest charged on past due balances typically. And if the creditor does not ever agree to negotiate a settlement, you'd be on the hook for this entire higher balance. If your credit score suffers as well, this can lead to future credit being more expensive to obtain, as you may only be eligible for higher interest rates or subprime lending options. And finally, if a creditor does negotiate a settlement, let's say maybe you do have an account in collections and they agree to work with you to get that resolved, there may be tax liability on the portion you were not required to pay, as the IRS considers this a form of income. I started doing my household's taxes this weekend. We didn't have all the information, but was just trying to feel things out. And that was one of the questions as I was going through that software was, did you have any debt forgiven through a settlement? So this is something that you would want to speak with a tax professional about if you're considering settlement, to get a clear understanding of what your potential tax liability could be. So again, there's a time and a place that debt settlement makes sense, especially if you're trying to resolve some old collection accounts, But a lot of people are not made aware of what they were signing up for with the debt settlement company and wish that they had more information like this before enrolling current open and active accounts into a debt settlement or a debt relief program that they may have found online when searching for debt help. All right, option number 4, bankruptcy. So bankruptcy is a legal process through which people who cannot repay debts to creditors may seek relief from some or all of their debts. Although you can file bankruptcy without an attorney, it is typically not recommended. Typically, this should be reserved as a last resort after exploring all other options due to the significant impact that it can have. There are 2 main types of personal bankruptcy, a Chapter 13, which does typically still require repayment through the court of all or at least a portion of the debt owed, or Chapter 7, which typically allows debts to be discharged without requiring repayment. Talking with an attorney can help you understand which you may be eligible for. Many bankruptcy attorneys will offer a free initial consultation to help you get some clarity on what filing bankruptcy may look like for you, what you might be eligible for, and just help you understand if this is an avenue that you want to explore in more detail. Again, there are pros and cons here. A pro would be that filing bankruptcy may be able to stop adverse action, including garnishment, repossession, foreclosure. Absolutely seek legal advice if this is something you are facing. Bankruptcy may also stop collection calls and provide you some relief there as well. Depending on the terms of the bankruptcy, you may end up paying out less to creditors than you would with other options. However, there are upfront expenses involved. Typically, filing a bankruptcy involves attorney and court fees that must be paid. So really weigh this carefully, especially if you are pursuing a Chapter 13 bankruptcy, as you have these additional fees on top of still repaying some or all of that debt. Your income and assets may have an impact on your ability to file and have debts discharged as well. And not all forms of debt are able to be included and or discharged in a bankruptcy. So federal student loans are one example that are typically not able to be included here. Federal debt is a whole different ballgame. So this is something that you would also want to talk through with an attorney if you're considering this, to understand if the types of debt you have are even eligible and what this would look like for your situation. And bankruptcy can stay on your credit report for up to 10 years, impacting your ability to obtain future credit and the cost of obtaining that credit. It is not impossible to rebuild credit after bankruptcy, but it is a bit more of an uphill battle. So again, this is important to weigh, especially in the instance of a Chapter 13 bankruptcy that would typically still require debt repayment. If there is another option to repay the debt that can avoid the credit impact of a bankruptcy, it is absolutely worth exploring carefully, digging deep and seeing if there's some options that you can, shake out in your budget, whether it's bringing some more money in, reducing expenses, to see if you can make that work to be able to avoid that. All right, our final option to discuss today is what's called debt management plans. So this is probably the least known option of the 5, and since it's one not a lot of people are aware of, we wanted to make sure that you learn about it today and if it's a good fit for you. So debt management plans are typically for unsecured debt like credit cards, collection accounts, medical bills, in some cases payday and personal loans, although those do tend to be a little bit more case by case compared to credit cards and collections, which are pretty standardly included. This is something that we offer here at GreenPath to the people that we serve, and you have access to this if it's of interest through GreenPath's partnership with Harvard Federal Credit Union. Even if you're not officially a member of the credit union yet, we hope you will become one, but you can let us know that you were connected by Harvard Federal Credit Union through today's winter session and have access to explore this if this is something that feels like it could be a good option for you. So through a debt management plan, GreenPath creates a structured repayment plan to pay the debt off in full. And we reach out to your creditors on your behalf to get things like lower interest rates, perhaps things like waived late fees, officially agreed to by the creditor. You send your money to GreenPath, and then we send each of your creditors a payment on your behalf every month until that balance gets paid back in full. This is different from that debt settlement or debt relief program that we just talked about because GreenPath does not negotiate balances themselves. We're repaying those debts in full. We're simply working to get the terms of the debt repayment negotiated to make it more manageable to get those debts paid back in full. And the other key difference is that creditors are involved every step of the way. So we send your creditors a proposal. They agree to accept a certain payment and offer a certain interest rate until that debt is paid in full. It's up to the creditor to dictate what that will look like for their accounts. So it can vary from creditor to creditor, but they officially agree to work with us. They continue to get a payment from you every month, building that positive payment history until those balances get paid back in full, which is typically in a 3 to 5 year time period on a debt management plan. By being able to negotiate those better repayment terms, on average, a debt management plan saves people $161 in monthly minimum payments compared to what you're paying right now with those higher interest rates. And because of this, people save an average of more than $25,000 in interest over the time it takes to get this debt repaid on a debt management plan. Those average interest rates go from an average of 28% when people come to us to start a debt management plan to an average of 7.3% on a debt management plan. I don't know about y'all, but I can think of a lot of things that I would rather do with $25,000 than pay it straight to interest charges. So this can be a really big game changer in not only being able to get this debt paid off, but also give you some more financial freedom to put this money towards other financial goals that you have longer term as well. And not only does it save people money monthly on average, not only does it save quite a bit of money in interest over the life of the debt repayment, but debts are also paid off an average of 6 years sooner with a debt management plan. So getting those better repayment terms in place can really, really be a game changer. Debt repayment goes from an average of more than 10 years to an average of just over 4 years on a debt management plan. So this is something that can be really exciting and really motivating, especially if you feel like you've been treading water for a while. Maybe you're not eligible for like a debt consolidation loan due to your credit score or your debt to income ratio. This may be a really, really good option to help you finally make some progress, build some momentum, and get this debt paid off and behind you, and start thinking about what other financial goals you can start working towards by getting this debt paid off. So looking at the pros of a debt management plan, no minimum credit score or approval requirements like there would be with a loan. We are facilitating repayment. We are not lending you money. We're working with those accounts as they remain. So this is not something that you have to be approved for. We want to make sure that it's a sustainable option. You know, it works in your budget. It's going to help you get where you need to be, not make things harder, but nothing that we're looking for as far as underwriting requirements like a loan would. Another key benefit is that the debt management plan is typically structured to pay this full debt off within 3 to 5 years at the most. So 5 years, of course, is not nothing, but if you're looking at 10 years or even longer to keep doing things on your own, having that light at the end of the tunnel can be really, really helpful to know when you will be able to get this debt paid off and behind you. A debt management plan also offers the benefits of getting money to one place. So you send money to GreenPath, and then we distribute that payment to your creditors on your behalf every month. This makes it easier for you than having to juggle multiple payments and multiple due dates, which is absolutely a win as well. And finally, one of the biggest pros of the debt management plan is what creditors are able to offer through it. So again, every creditor has different terms that they can offer for their accounts, so it will vary from creditor to creditor, but many are able to offer significantly reduced interest rates, again, going from an average of 28% to an average of 7.3%, which leads to lower monthly payments required as less needs to go to keeping up with interest charges, while still being able to pay in full within 5 years at the most. All right, even though GreenPath offers debt management plans, as with all options we've discussed, there are some important things to weigh and keep in mind. A debt management plan can be a good option for many people, but it's not the best option for everyone. So some things to keep in mind here include the fact that on a debt management plan, the creditor will close the accounts included. Having those cards closed may actually be a pro. However, if your goal is to become debt-free and not get back into debt, not having access to use those credit cards may be a very good thing. When those cards do all close at once, this can potentially lead to an initial negative impact on the credit. However, if these accounts have already started to fall past due, or you've missed a payment here or there, or maybe they're maxed out, you're already pretty close to that limit, you have more than likely already seen most of the negative impact and really only have up to go from there. As balances are paid off more aggressively with more of your payment going to the principal versus so much going to interest, and as that positive payment history builds, many people who use a debt management plan to pay off debt see their credit score increase over the life of the program, even if there is an initial negative impact when the debt management plan starts. So if you're considering this and you're concerned about the credit impact, we will absolutely talk it through in more detail with you about what this may look like for your specific credit situation and help you develop a plan to rebuild your credit score as soon as possible if we anticipate that you may see some of that negative impact if you were to start this. I do also want to clarify that while many creditors, especially major credit card companies, officially agree to work with the debt management plan, some creditors may not, but they will still typically accept payments and to post them towards your balance. If you have a creditor who does not work with a debt management plan, or is one that maybe doesn't offer concessions, this is something that we'll talk through with you in detail to make sure that you've got a plan in place for. And finally, while having a conversation about the best options for you to tackle your debt is absolutely free and confidential, I do want you to be aware that there is typically a small setup and monthly maintenance fee associated with enrolling on a debt management plan for those who choose to do so. Those fees are regulated by state law and vary from state to state, but they are typically based on the amount of debt included and do not exceed $75 in any state. Typically, any fee for the debt management plan is significantly outweighed by the savings obtained through the creditor concessions. The average debt management plan fee is $29 a month, leading to an average savings of more than $20,000 across the total debt repayment still. But we will talk this through with you in detail if you're considering this option to make sure it's a win for you. If it's not outweighed by the benefits or if it's not something you're comfortable with, totally okay. We'll talk through what options make sense for you and help you come up with a plan that you're confident is best for you. All right, I know that was a lot of information. Hopefully at least one of these options has captured your attention and feels like this may be a realistic option that you want to know more about. Regardless of which option you choose, there are a few tips that are going to be important to stay on track towards your goal of getting rid of debt. The first of which being to develop a budget or a spending plan. I know a budget can feel like a scary word and kind of elicits a negative connotation, but a budget is really just a plan of knowing where your money is going, and it's designed to help you keep track of making sure your money is going to the places you want it to be going to help you reach your financial goals. So having and sticking to a budget will be key to your success of paying debt off. That does not mean that your budget cannot include things like going out to eat or fun things that you want to do. The difference is that you've planned for that and you know that you have money set aside to do those things because they're important to you, while also still having funds to work towards your goals. So please do not think that when I say develop a budget, that means you have to cut out everything that brings you joy. That's not the case. It just means, again, having a plan for where you want and need your dollars to go to be sure that you've got a plan to work towards your goals. It's also important to track your spending to make sure you are on track with your budget and your financial goals. There are various ways to do this. You could use the cash envelope system, paper and pencil, spreadsheets, apps, lots of possibilities out here and lots of possibilities even within those methods. Find a way that works for you and commit to keeping a close eye on where every dollar you spend is going. I also encourage people to have savings available to fall back on in an emergency before starting to aggressively tackle debt. This is a question that I get almost every time I do this presentation. Which do I do first? Build up savings or pay off debt? It's like a chicken, which came first, the chicken or an egg thing, right? There's no right or wrong answer, but my encouragement is to build up some savings so that if an emergency comes up, you have some money to turn to instead of making some good progress on your debt and then ending up going right back into debt to cover that emergency. So you do you figure out what makes you the most comfortable, but that's my strong encouragement. You don't have to have a significant emergency savings of like 3 months built up. Start small, figure out what it looks like. You know, maybe it's your auto insurance deductible. Maybe if you know an appliance is on the edge of going out in your house, figure out what that cost might be and get that amount saved. Whatever makes sense for your household, just encourage you to have a cushion available so that you don't end up feeling defeated if you have to go right back to credit cards after making some good progress because you didn't have savings for those emergency expenses. Up next, look for opportunities to reduce expenses or bring more money in with the purpose of putting those extra funds towards paying your debt off quicker. Remember that cutting out expenses that are considered more of a luxury or picking up an extra shift or a side gig, this doesn't have to be forever. It could be a temporary move that you make to help you reach your goal quicker. And finally, my biggest tip to stay on track is know why you are doing this. Set clear goals. Make sure they are realistic and attainable. Have smaller goals and milestones that you're working towards. Have a plan for how you can realistically get there. And then celebrate your successes at every step of the way. Don't wait until you've paid off all your debt before taking a deep breath and celebrating. Celebrate as you get an account paid off, along the way. This is something that's exciting and it's really, really worthwhile to keep your why in front of you because it's not always easy. It can be stressful, it can be challenging, but it's worth it when you've got your other goals beyond having this debt paid off in mind as well. So I mentioned this before, but GreenPath Financial Wellness offers debt management plans. We also offer free confidential financial counseling that involves taking a closer look at your budget with you, collaborating with you to develop an action plan to help you work towards your financial goals, whether that is getting debt paid off, whether that's other goals that you may have as well. We can talk to you about other financial concerns related to credit, housing, student loans, other types of debt. If you are interested in a debt management plan, absolutely reach out. Even if it ends up not being the best fit for you, we'll help you come up with an option that is something you're excited about, that you're confident is going to be a good way to get where you want to be moving. So we'll talk through the pros and cons of each of the options that make sense for you based on your unique situation, your unique goals, and equip you with the information you need to make an informed decision about what option is best for you. We're a nonprofit. No one is getting rich off of debt management plans. No one is earning commission. We are not trying to push you towards this. We just want you to know the option or know the information that you need to determine if it's a good fit for you, if this is something you're interested in, and then you get to make that decision about what option is going to make the most sense for you. So if you would like to talk with a counselor, if you would like to explore a debt management plan, if you would like to talk through some of these other debt options that we explored today, if you want to know more about if there's other options that might be a fit for your situation, you can give us a call at 877-337-3399. Again, let us know that you were connected by Harvard Federal Credit Union. Even if you're not an active member yet, you were still connected through the credit union through being at Wintersession today. You can also learn more at greenpath.com/HarvardFCU. There's a lot of great information about our counseling, about debt management plans, a bunch of other great financial education resources for you to check out there as well. All right. Any questions that I can answer for you all before I let you get back to your day?
We did have a few questions outstanding in the chat here. Thank you, Amber. That was amazing, as always. All right. So the first outstanding question we have is, if you have unused credit, as in unused credit cards, does that count as debt in your debt to income ratio?
Great question. I believe that typically this is looking at the outstanding balances. So they're looking at, what you actually currently owe. There may be some consideration taken, because theoretically you could apply for a loan and then go max that card out tomorrow and be in a situation where it's dicier. But my understanding is that typically that debt to income ratio predominantly looks at the actual outstanding balances that you have at the time that lender is pulling your credit to review that.
That makes sense. Yeah. Cool. Very good. All right. And then the next one is, we have a question about if you mentioned at all the balance transfer cards for credit card debt.
Yeah, I did not mention that. That's one of the options that is, one of those others I mentioned. This wasn't an all-inclusive list.
Right.
That can be an option there. That's something that you have to receive an offer for. So it's a little bit more limited as to what the availability is. If you're in a situation where you can get that debt paid off within that 6-month or 12-month period that they're offering, it may be a good option. If you can buckle down and get that taken care of. Typically, there is a fee to do a balance transfer. It's usually a percentage of the amount that you're transferring. So you want to weigh that and make sure that that's a win for you. But if you get into kind of a cycle of transferring those funds and then, we're at month 11 and it's not paid off, so I need to find another balance transfer and do this. If you're continuing to pay those fees and continuing to move that debt around, that can be counterintuitive. It can, just make it a little bit more challenging. So again, that's another option that can be a good fit. If you've got an offer for that, if you want to talk it through with one of our counselors, we'd be happy to walk that through with you and see in more detail if that makes sense. I've used balance transfers, so there are times and places where it can make sense, but again, you want to make sure that you really, if at all possible, have a plan to get that paid off in that period to avoid having to just kind of keep kicking that can down the road, so to speak, and moving those debts from card to card.
Yeah, absolutely. I know when we do our own version of like budgeting workshops and stuff, we always stress that as a cautionary way to do it, just
Yeah.
because, especially if the zero balance transfer, if the balance or the interest on that after the zero, like the promotional period wears off, is higher than it was, it could really get you in deep water also. So you really want to make sure that you know all of the factors, like the interest rate, make sure you have a good plan to pay it off within that promotional window, that kind of thing. So very
And
good.
while we're on the topic, I don't know, I think that this is often more for like a promotional rate when you open a new card, but sometimes
Mhm.
it's for balance transfers too. But you
Mhm.
really want to pay attention to the language because sometimes the language is that the interest will be deferred. And if you
Mhm.
don't pay off the balance by the end of that promotional rate, then they may go back and tack on that interest from that time period. So you really want to pay close attention to that language as well if this is something you're exploring, so you don't end up with like a huge like backtracked interest charge tacked on there if you're not able to get that amount paid off in full within that promotional period.
Great point. Yeah, definitely make sure you're looking at all of the language and everything, all the fine print for those types of things. Very good. Okay, and then one more question on here, which is, do you qualify for debt management plan if your account is already closed?
Yeah, absolutely. If that's something where, whether you've said enough is enough, I want to close this account out and just focus on getting it paid, or if the creditor has closed it, that's typically still something that can absolutely be included. You don't have to worry about having that potential impact of having the account closed out. It's just a great way to hopefully get you some better terms in place to work towards getting that account paid off a little bit quicker.
Awesome. Great. All right. Well, I'm not seeing any more questions. If anybody has any last minute questions here, please throw them in the Q&A. We've got just a minute or so. We'll kind of a couple more, at least one more coming in.
All right.
Does paying off early have any positive impact on your credit score?
Yes, in that it happens quicker. So when you get those accounts paid off, as you're paying that down, the sooner that happens, the sooner you'll see that positive impact there. So it's not necessarily going to have like a different impact if you pay it off sooner than if you pay it off later. It's more so you'll see that impact sooner rather than later if you get the account paid off quicker.
Makes sense. Very good. Okay, great. All right. Well, we are, that's going to be it for us today, I think. Any more last minute questions, feel free to throw them up. But if not, thank you all so much for joining us here today, Wintersession Handling Debt. It's a really intense conversation, especially when you really need help with it. So please take a look at the Green Path options if you need further help after today or any other options. As we mentioned, this will be recorded and you will get an email with the survey link as well as the link to this presentation and all of our presentations you can find on our YouTube page as well. Just go to Harvard FCU on YouTube. You can just search that on our channel. So thank you so much, Amber. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us here today. I hope you have a great rest of your day. And we also have Wintersession presentations tomorrow, Investing 101 and Gen Z Guide to Wealth Building. So if either of those topics sound interesting to you, registration is still open, so feel free to take a look at those as well. Thank you all so much, and I hope you have a great day. Thank you. This has been Ty at Harvard FCU and Amber at Green Path.